Okay,
Hey, Kara.
everyone. Hey, everyone. My name is Jen Wetham, and I am a program administrator at the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. And this session is being recorded. We're recording now. And I would like to just welcome all of you engineering faculty to this online session today. My co-facilitator is Lucas Myers from Lower Columbia Community College. Lucas has been teaching online biology courses for many, many years. He has a lot of experience teaching STEM disciplines online. And so, Lucas, I just wanted to say thank you to you for being my co-host today. And is there anything you want to say?
Oh, just glad to be here and look forward to seeing what all these great faculty are working on and how we can help facilitate them continuing to improve their online courses and go through those challenges and see where we end up here in the next hour.
Thanks, Lucas. And I just let Alyssa Sills into the room as well. And Alyssa is I'm a faculty professional developer, and she is also a faculty professional developer, and she specializes in e-learning. So Alyssa is also here to answer questions about using Canvas, questions about technology, and she's just a great assessment guru. And I guess I'll also just say really quickly, Steve Gantz is here as well. He's one of our policy associates in e-learning, and we know at the state board that right now is a very difficult and challenging time for faculty, and we really want to support you as best as we can. We know that there's lots of STEM specific issues, so we're really excited to learn more about how we can support you. So if you haven't had a chance to yet, if you've just joined us, please go ahead and type into the chat the engineering courses or course that you're teaching this spring and your biggest concern or question when it comes to transitioning your engineering course online due to COVID-19. So today's meeting is about how can we help you build a community while everyone is still working remotely. So we wanted to talk a little bit about why communities of practice. And again, I think when for faculty, a lot of times we tend to like do everything on our own. We tend to take on a heavy lift by ourselves and just design our courses in isolation just because we're passionate about our discipline, we're passionate about our teaching. And in this case with COVID-19, it's just not sustainable. And so what we would really like is to put engineering faculty in communication with other engineering faculty so that nobody has to reinvent the wheel. And we really want to help you all share resources with each other. Also, if there aren't best practices for some of the problems or challenges people are experiencing, we're interested in how we can get all of these fantastic brains together to create new solutions. And finally, we just want you to know that you are not alone. And a lot of times just faculty talking to other faculty is a great way to get inspired and get new ideas and also again, just know that you're not alone. So with that, again, we're going to start by using what you've typed into the chat as a way to kind of get started with the meeting. And so Lucas, I'm wondering what kinds of trends or themes are you seeing in the chat?
I would say labs is going to be where we need to start. Most people are stating that labs is their main issue right now.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm just wondering, is there any of you engineering faculty who are in the virtual room who would be willing to just take the mic for a second and just share a little bit about what are your specific concerns about labs?
Hi,
Hi, who's this?
Jesse Kaiser. Nice
Hi,
to meet
Jesse.
everyone.
Hello. Where do you teach, Jesse?
At Clark College, Vancouver.
Excellent, excellent. So Jesse, thanks for taking the mic. And what are you thinking about right now when it comes to labs?
Well, the in-person component is so hard to replicate uh, virtually. There's the way I'm approaching it right now is giving them a set of data, demonstrating how the machines or the lab works, and then asking them to analyze it. But that doesn't truly replicate them acquiring the data themselves. Um, so that is probably the biggest struggle, having them there to ask questions as they do the lab. That can't really be replicated unless we're to create a very complicated simulation program, which would be like a virtual reality game. Anyways, that's not really feasible. Uh, so yeah, it's just that in-person component.
Thank you so much. And I know that Lucas has, in other presentations with STEM faculty, Lucas has addressed this before. So Lucas, do you want to start by just saying a few words in response to the challenge, especially the challenge that face-to-face does not operate like, or online doesn't operate like face-to-face?
Yeah, I mean, this is common denominator, I think, across all of the STEM fields. But in reality, all classes is that you're not going to replicate face to face in an online environment. So I think it's about reshaping that and to look at, okay, what can we do in an online environment to meet our learning outcomes? And I think, Jesse, you're on the right track of figuring out what that looks like. But it's really easy as faculty for us to get caught up in that. Okay, how do I replicate what I'm doing in class? And that can be almost a barrier at times. I feel like from my experience too, from teaching face to face and online. Right now, I mainly teach anatomy, physiology, but I've taught cell biology and those things. And trying to take a wet lab and turn it into an online course, you can't replicate it, and it can get in your way if you keep trying to do that. So I really think in this day and age, we have to really reshape our thinking and think about what are the outcomes and how do I do that online. And just because it's online or different doesn't mean it's not good. And I think that's just reshaping that conversation will help us out mentally get there. And it's harder in some disciplines than others. And that's a problem we can tackle. And one thing that I think has been helpful for all the kind of groups that we've had is starting simple, understanding that for many of us, this is our first chance of doing this online. And then as we spend more time doing it, we continue to improve it and make it better and adapt, or new resources or people crowd sources we're going to talk about here to build new activities and support each other. So I think it's starting in that simple format, and it might be just like what you talked about, Jesse, with showing them the lab and giving them data. And that's the first step in putting it online.
So it seems like I want to bring up that theme of the in-person aspects of the courses. And so again, regardless of what folks teach, I'm wondering if people could talk a little bit about what are the learning outcomes or the things that you want students to know and be able to do that they have to do in person. And so, for example, let's say that I know with the microbiologists, one of them was learning how to use a microscope. So could folks just type into the chat or speak, what are the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve that currently students practice in the labs face to face?
Hi, this is Andrew from Lake Washington Tech. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Thanks,
Okay, good.
Andrew.
I'm using some new equipment today. So I've been doing Zoom meetings face to face with my students as if it were face to face. Let's put it that way. So I'm trying to change as little as possible. Okay, so in one of my classes, the thing that we're not able to do at all is I've had them divide up into teams using SolidWorks to create assemblies of 3D printed parts. So so the very general guideline is everybody, each person in the team has to build a part that mechanically relates to another team member's part. And these are engineering DTA folks that are going to be going on to bachelor's in mechanical engineering. After they've completed their program with us, then they go on to like UW or someplace. So that's something that we can't do remotely. That's something that you have to meet face to face. That's something that has to, we don't have access to our innovation lab and our 3D printers and laser cutters and all that fun stuff. And so that's something that I've just phased out and put some other activity in there. But it's not as good. And it's like I tell my students, you know, we're on an adventure together and we're going to make the best of it. And, you know, we're doing the best we can, and I'm doing the best I can, and you'll be doing the best you can. And we're still going to learn a huge amount from our time together. So, but yeah, there's just things that we can't do remotely.
Yeah, Andrew, I want to say thank you for volunteering this information and kind of how you are approaching this. And there was a couple of things I wanted to draw out. So one is that I heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you let some things go. Just knowing that like that we can't teach everything the same. And so first of all, just kind of eliminating what can be eliminated. And I also heard you saying that you're being really transparent and vulnerable and open with your students and just saying, hey, I'm figuring this out, you're figuring this out. So it sounds like you're being very responsive to the students as you're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's especially with Zoom, you know, I make the joke of it that, you know, I'm new to this and you're new to this, and you know, we're learning along the way together, and we're helping each other out, and we're doing all that together. So, you know, it's an adventure. We're on an adventure together. So
I think even just framing it like that to students is probably very reassuring. You know, and also it sounds like you have a really positive, supportive attitude, and which I know students probably really appreciate. So thank you for being willing to share. So Eric has a couple different concepts in here. Eric, would you mind taking the mic and just sharing a little bit about about this particular problem of practice?
Sure. So my students in one of my courses, really the only one of my 3 courses that I'm concerned about, are building electronic circuits and controlling those with Arduino and programming Arduino with MATLAB. And so there's a lot going on there with learning computer programming. Also, these students are brand new to learning electronics and breadboarding, and the confidence range of these students is all over the map. We issue them kits, and they work through a series of tutorials to kind of get introduced to the kit. And usually most of that work happens in class, and students work at a variety of paces, and some of them need a lot of help from both myself, the lab tech, and their peers, you know, just to get simple stuff figured out, like how to use a breadboard. And I'm generally, I mean, we've got a lab tech who's offering live support. We're mailing out the lab kits to them on Friday. And I'm just pretty concerned at how it's going to go for some of the students, particularly the low confidence students who don't have a lot of experience with electronics or any experience with electronics. And I'm just worried about them getting really overwhelmed.
Thank you, Eric, for voicing that. And I'm wondering, what strategies are people using to support students' confidence? And Eric, I do want to say thank you for bringing this into the picture, because we know, you know, like higher research shows that students need academic confidence. And so how are people bolstering academic confidence or helping students build confidence, or maybe even teaching productive persistence? Like if a student gets frustrated, how do you help them persist in the face of obstacles and challenges?
I don't have an answer, but I think it ties over to the problem solving side of things as well, because we don't see the look on their face. They're not as likely to ask us a question and or interact with their peers. But the confidence, I think, is, and the possibly losing students is a
Paige,
concern.
thank you, Paige. And Paige, where do you teach?
Columbia Basin College.
Great, thank you. So Lucas, I'm wondering if you could speak to this, because you have taught online for a long time with STEM students, and obviously some of the same things persist. How do you support low confidence students? And also, Lucas's classes are completely asynchronous, so he doesn't see their faces either. So Lucas, what do you do?
Yeah, no, I was going to jump in there anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Because
Sorry.
I think that it all comes down to the way you design your course in terms of if students are going to interact. Because I've actually found, and there's research around it, that if you design it well enough, you can actually get more engagement from those low confidence students in an online environment than you can in a face-to-face. Because they don't have the collection of peers looking at them a lot of times. They don't have the intimidation of standing in front of the teacher. A lot of times the asynchronous actions in an online course can actually yield it easier for a student to reach out to you and ask questions, because there's less of that kind of, while we like to have that facial recognition and eye contact and everything, for a lot of people that can be very intimidating. And so at times it's harder for them to ask those questions for fear of looking stupid and lack of confidence and all those things. So there's a variety of ways you can do that. You know, if you're setting up a course, having those discussion spaces to ask questions, having those online office hours, having assignments that guide them into asking those questions, putting people in teams can also be a really good way to build that confidence. I've found is if you can create teams online that create their own support system. I've found that we've had students that maintain the same study group for 3 or 4 classes online because we put them in a team early on. So there's a variety of community building things that can help with that confidence. I think also checking in with your students, and it's hard if you have a lot. I know engineers generally are lower FTE, but I could be just from my experience at our colleges. But I generally have 100 to 150 depending on the quarter students each quarter. But checking in with them individually, sending them emails, calling them is actually a really good way in the online environment as well to build that confidence, because a lot of times they don't want to email you or check in with you, but when you call them, they're like, oh, I do have a question. I need to ask you this. And it also makes them feel more valuable, like you actually care about their learning because you're making the point to check in with them. And we've heard a lot of faculty already this quarter talk about the idea of they've been doing check-ins, and it's been really productive so far. And then we've had some others that are just starting, and they're going to kind of get back to us this next week about how those are going. So I think it's something to look at as well. But I would just say in the online classroom, I found that students as long as it's designed in a way that's helpful, students with less confidence a lot of times actually blossom a little more. You just have to be careful with how you design that online class, because if it's too technical, too complicated, as you're talking about with like equipment, it can get pretty frustrating. So you really have to have those supports built in.
So Lucas, thank you for that. And I do have a related comment from someone in the chat. And just in case this person wants to remain anonymous, I won't say the name, but if you don't want to remain anonymous, please feel free to voice this. But this comment says, we don't have time to quote unquote design the course. We have to get the content out there on short notice. And thank you to this person for writing that. And so we do have some suggestions about this. And if it's okay, Charles Mueller, is it okay if I pick on you and ask you to say what you said to the physics group yesterday?
Well, I'm not sure how much it applies in this case. So I was a little bit thinking about not doing that. But
Yeah.
one of the things we do in our physics classes at Edmonds Community College is basically let the students design their own experiments, and we have them request equipment from the storeroom that we get for them. And what I'm trying to do this quarter is basically give the students some tools that they can bring, that they can request, and we send it to them in the mail, or they come and pick it up at the college at a at a time that's safe. And we're letting them just kind of run their own experiments. And so instead of trying to worry about covering content each quarter, each week, and making sure the labs work for whatever they're designing, have them design their own thing and have them and take ownership of that learning experience and learn and take doing their own labs and figuring out their own stuff.
Charles, thank you for sharing that. And I think, and again, I recognize that I am not a content expert in this particular discipline, and so I'm so I want to be very respectful of the discipline-specific nuances. But I will say that if it were me, I would think less about getting out content and more about thinking about what are the things that I really want what are the 3 or 4 things I really want students to know or be able to do, and then design learning experiences based on those outcomes. And so again, like I think in working with the STEM groups, there are obviously there's content that you want to have the students know, but I think if there's ways to streamline that content based on bigger core principles. And Lucas, I'm wondering if you could speak to that as a STEM expert. Like, how do you kind of let go of content in given the particular challenges of COVID-19?
Yeah, it's not easy by any means. I think in every discipline and every manner, we all hold on to our things that we feel are vital. Whether you're teaching English, biology, engineering, whatever it may be, there's things that we hold dear to, whether it's content or an assignment. Like sometimes there's that assignment we really, really love that we do in a class or a lab, and we're like, well, the class just won't be the same without that. And so it can be hard to let go of that. And I think it's okay for all of us to feel that way and understand that. But we have to realize, one, just shoving content out doesn't mean they learn it, right? Just putting it on there, and just because they go through it and take a quiz or do an activity on it doesn't necessarily mean it was valuable or that they walk away from the class any better from it. And so I think that what we really have to, and Jen touched on this, is look at learning experience for the outcomes for the course, and how do we best meet those needs this quarter in this situation, because it is unique. And so it's okay that what we do is a little bit unique this quarter, and figuring out how to make those learning experiences valuable, because that's going to be really important to the students as well. Students recognize if we're just going to throw stuff at them versus creating some learning experiences that really meet the most important pieces of our learning outcomes. And I know sometimes the structures of our courses and our institutions make some of those things a little more difficult. And so you have to work the best you can within that frame.
I would also say too that for people who are worried about, students dropping, students not retaining, that the experience that you shape for your students will indeed impact. So again, there's sort of that tenet of go slow so that you can go fast. And so again, and Lucas and I and Alyssa and others have been suggesting that folks really focus on 1 week at a time, and that less is more. And I guess the other thing I just wanted to ask is, how many people have used Canvas Commons to see if there is, just to see if there's other courses similar to the ones that you teach that have already been designed in the Canvas Commons, so that you don't have to worry so much about the design, and so that you can focus on the 2 or 3 activities that will really matter to students and student learning. So I guess I'm just wondering, are there folks who have been using or looking in Canvas Commons to see what's already been created? And possibly, okay, so Poppy has been, and so Poppy, could you speak to that experience? And hi, Poppy. Could you speak to that experience? Did you find anything?
Sure. It may not have been specifically to engineering part of it all, but I was in a couple of, I've been in so many Zoom meetings now, I can't remember what's what, but it had to do with introducing students to Canvas that weren't, and it was really well set up. And so she shared it. There was a little difficulty because I work at Clover Park Technical College, and apparently our Canvas was set up so that we couldn't see a lot of shared information. So I shared that with the people in our e-learning lab so that more people could see it. But what's nice is that when you do get into, finally do get like pre-set up modules and assignments, and it makes it easier because you can pick and choose what parts you want. So, you know, it takes some getting used to is how, because everybody sets up their courses differently. So it gives you some ideas on how to set your your overall online learning system, and then to pick and choose the modules or assignments or what that you want to import and kind of use for your own. So it's a big help. You know, it'd just be nice if, you know, I had another month before I actually had to start everything so I could get it all where I want. But
Poppy, thank you so much. And Alyssa is responding to your contributions with START modules. And Alyssa, would you be willing to just talk a little bit about the Getting Started module templates while I try to find the link to the Canvas shell where we have all these kinds of resources?
Sure. Many of the e-learning offices have put together START modules that faculty can just copy. I think they usually put them in Commons so that they're easy to bring into your course. I know, I think Poppy and I must have been in the same meeting because I know that there have been a couple shared this week, and even people that already had START modules at their college still wanted to see the START module from other colleges. So do check in with your e-learning office and see what they might have available for you. Some of the colleges even have like course templates available where they might have like created already 10 modules for you and put the headers in and maybe created some assignment shells, and then you just go in and fill the content. So it takes a little bit of the lift of course building off of you because some of those pieces are already built. And the START modules are awesome for students. It really helps them get grounded in the course. It's a great place to put an orientation video, like a little course tour of your classroom, of you explaining, you know, where things are, how to find stuff, so that students don't get caught in an endless and, you know, they just loop around in a scavenger hunt trying to remember where things are. So orientation videos are great for getting students started. Other things that are good in START modules are that getting started in Canvas type information, links to where students can find help. You might possibly even include links to specific Canvas videos or Canvas help sheets from the guides pages that can show students step by step how to do things. There's no need for you to reinvent the wheel for showing students how to do things in Canvas because Canvas has already done all of that for us. And you just need to know where to find that. And that will be in the Canvas community. And I can put a link to the Canvas guides here in the chat in a minute. Introductory discussions are great in a START module. Basically, any information that your students are going to need to be successful in your course, set up for different technologies you might be using. I mean, there's just a bunch of different things that can go in there depending on what you're teaching and how you're teaching it. But yes, yay to START modules because they are fantastic.
Alyssa, thank you. And I also think too, for those of you who are worried about retaining your students, and I know this might sound counterintuitive, but again, the president of UW also suggested this to the UW faculty, so we're not suggesting anything that Research One institutions aren't suggesting, that the first week you do as many low stakes things as possible with your students.
Definitely.
Yeah, so again, for those of you who are feeling like, oh my gosh, I need to perfectly birth a 10-week rigorful course in it, overnight, please release yourself from that. That is just not what anyone would expect from you right now. And again, taking it 1 week at a time, building as you go, being very responsive to students. I think the other piece that I'd really like to just bring out too is I think there's a lot of instructors who have worked for a long time about how they deliver the content. Like I'm sure many of you are gifted lecturers, and I'm sure many of you have spent a lot of time learning how to explain certain concepts in ways that students really get it and their eyes light up. And again, I know that that what I'm going to say next might be a little painful to hear, but I'm sure there's lots of content online that's high quality, that you could put in the Canvas shell. So if it were me, I would focus less of my efforts to redeveloping content and more about like finding little bits of content that my students can consume, and then figuring out how am I going to assess their learning. Lucas, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I think that's what you have to do. Gosh, I had a thought in my brain just. We've been on a few of these. My brain just went blank on me. That's what happens when I'm trying to summarize chat on a sheet, listen at the same time.
Yes, but, Lucas is taking detailed notes.
I think that the more we can work our students into it with the low stakes activities, the more we can realize that you're speaking about how we've delivered it. We're not going to be able to deliver it the same way we do in class. There's a lot of amazing things out there that you can use. I just think it always goes back to no matter what you're designing, whether it's face-to-face or online, they're just different mediums. It's by week 10 or maybe week 9 this spring or week 8, depending on how your quarter's set up, how do I get the students where I want them to the best of my abilities? And what can I find and organize to do that? I always think of it, especially online even more, is I'm trying to lead them down a path. And at the end of that path is where that's the goal. And so how do I keep them on that path? How do I keep it organized? And it's just going to look it's going to look different than face-to-face. I think you just have to be okay with that. And if you have content that you're really like the way you've given it as a lecture or explanation, try to see if there's other resources out there that there's so many great videos and simulations already online that are accessible, that are closed captioned, that are really valuable that students can use. And then you can fill in the gaps as needed. And that keeps you from getting caught up in barriers and getting caught up in like, oh, I got to record this video and I got to be up till 1 a.m. recording this video, versus I can create some structure and then I can fill in the needs as you go. And I think that's really helpful as a teacher, because we can really get overwhelmed with the amount of work we have to do if we feel like we have to create everything as an individual. And I think that was kind of the reason Jen's really and others have worked to get these going, is like, we're not in this as individuals. We're in this as a whole community in the state, as communities in our disciplines, as faculty, in a very unique situation for a lot of our faculty who've never taught online, and then certain disciplines that just don't lend itself to online as well as others. And so I think you really have to approach it in that way.
Well said, Lucas. Eric has written in the chat, for anyone teaching numerical methods or intro to MATLAB, he has a suite of videos. Eric, thank you. And if there's anything you'd like to say about those materials.
Well, I think a lot of people on this call are familiar with it. I developed an online applied numerical methods course that several colleges from across the state listed through Washington Online. I was teaching it a few years ago. I'm using that material again, and there's a full Canvas shell ready to go on the WSRD Canvas site for anyone who wants to use it. And you can email me for any more information, but it's pretty much a package it's ready to go. Probably if you import it, you'll need to do a bunch of cleanup with due dates and stuff. But
but
Can't help.
nice to have. Nice to have. I think changing due dates is a small problem. Thank you for, yeah, Jesse wrote fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. So Eric has suggested something that's been used in previous quarters, and Eric, is it available on Canvas Commons, or is it, you mentioned a sharing source I'm not familiar with?
Yeah, for Wasurdi, which I think most people here are familiar with, we have a statewide Canvas collaboration.
Oh.
And so it's there. There's content there for a lot of different engineering courses. But yeah, I have the course export there from the last time I taught it full online. And I did not put it on Canvas Commons because Canvas Commons, I think, just started right after I stopped teaching it online regularly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You know, if you would be willing to put it onto Canvas Commons, that would be awesome. And I guess maybe I'm just thinking, sorry, and I'm just thinking out loud here. I didn't realize that there was already a statewide group for engineering.
Yep, Wasurdi.
And so
been around for 30 years.
That is awesome. And so there's already resources kind of developed. And so I guess we were hoping to create a Canvas shell for this group to share, you know, because obviously COVID-19 instruction looks a little different because a lot of students don't have access to tech. And so I'm just wondering if folks would be interested in having a Canvas shell just for this group to share resources during this time.
I'll let others chime in, but my personal preference would be to just beef up what we've already got built that gets sporadic use.
Are you okay? So maybe after offline we could talk a little bit more about what that would look like, you know, or just how to get access to that, or maybe we could even link to that through a different Canvas shell, because it would be nice if we could contribute to stuff that's already been built. Poppy is saying, I agree with Eric, too many places to go is already confusing. So if anyone has a suggestion for how we could link up with that site so that we could share resources, that would be great. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to put the link in the chat. If I have the link with the course number, will that get you there?
Yeah, give me the link and then we'll go from there. I mean, please provide me the link, not give me.
That's right.
Give me. Thank you. So along with what Eric has offered, you know, with videos and a course, what do other people have? What do other people have developed, or are they working on that they might like to share with the group? So there's a question in here about I am new to Canvas. Can you guide me to the Canvas Commons? And I do think it's actually really helpful to see the Canvas Commons. And so I'm just very quickly going to share my screen. And so here is the Canvas shell for the Lifeboat modules. And I know some of you joined us for those because I recognize names and some faces. And so as you can see, we've just got some resources in here about just basically how to get from 0 to 60 for your first couple weeks. But if you see here, there's this little icon, and I don't know, can you see my mouse? There's a little icon to the very far left. You see my picture, the dashboard, mail, and then there's this little kind of arrow with a circle around it, and it says Commons. And so if you click on that, you can see Commons, the Canvas Commons. And I guess maybe I'll just type in Introduction to Engineering. So you can see that there's something here for electrical and computer engineering design, introductory circuits, there's introduction to engineering, Yeah, so there's a lot of materials here in the Canvas Commons for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at the Commons before. And let's see, I can see in the chat that, so just one more question and then we'll stop with the WSRTI. Eric, who runs the WSRTI course space?
Oh, Pat, I see you're on the call. Do you know the answer?
Hi, everybody. Pat Burnett here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Pat. Yes.
Does Joe Graber, is he the one that started the Canvas site and then it went to SBCTC?
Renuka has confirmed it is Joe Graber.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will reach out to Joe and coordinate with him.
But so currently I'm the chair for WSRTI. I'd happily work with you. Like we've got, yeah, I mean, I can work with y'all on coordinating and linking whatever we need to do.
That would be amazing. Thank you. And again, we wouldn't want to take over, but I think if we could maybe even have a special like COVID-19 space on that website, and then hopefully, as Eric was saying, you know, resource it a little bit more as folks are developing content and ideas and applications. Thank you so much. So there is a comment from Poppy. Poppy, could you talk about your overhead projector?
Sure, it's just that. It's sometimes I use it in the classroom when I go over engineering problems, math, that sort of thing. And so let's see. I did a design one. Let's see if it's, this is just to give you an idea. And we were designing floor plans and moving around things. Can I share my screen?
I think you can, but I'll double check.
There we go. Okay,
Oh.
yeah. So for example, so you can see my hand and you can see, and we can move this around and then students can see what I'm doing, or I can write mathematical equations and I can physically show them writing. And I know whiteboard kind of does, but it's nowhere near as quick and easy as just having my overhead projector, picking up what I'm doing, and then being able to interact better with the students that way. So it's little portable Dymo, Mimimo view thing, and it's wonderful.
Poppy, did you purchase that or did your institution purchase it?
They actually had some extras about a year or two ago, and so I claimed one. And so it's just literally, it's very portable, but for me, it's a lifesaver because I don't know how else I could explain other, you know, it's tedium trying to write on a little whiteboard, and especially trying to manipulate items. You know, so if I had how to put together things, I could put that in there and actually do that. So it's a way for them to see hands-on my doing something.
Alyssa would like to know if it's an Elmo dock camera.
No, it is a DYMO Mimio View, and it might be a dock camera. I'm not sure what this. I call it my overhead.
I think that's awesome. And also it's reminding me that Laura Schuler, who is convening math faculty, said that one institution just purchased document cams for their math faculty. So again, it's a very inexpensive, nice way to kind of try to communicate, just to try to replicate the face-to-face environment. Poppy, thank you for sharing. And I think if we could, Steve Gantz said that someone set up something similar with an iPhone. Renuka, And I'm so sorry if you could just tell me how to pronounce your name, Renuka. Could you share what you wrote into the chat?
Sure. I have a document camera. It's a really small gooseneck document camera made by Hue, and it works pretty well for showing hand sketching isometrics 3-view in my engineering graphics class. So that might be a solution for folks who are teaching that class as well. It cost about $80. They shipped it to me in 3 days. I paid for it out of pocket, but I'm going to ask for reimbursement from the college. I don't really care though. It's going to make that part of class go so much smoother that I just bought it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what else I can say about it. It's got pretty good high resolution. It's not HD, but it's got pretty nice resolution. It plugs right into Zoom, so I can teach that way because I'm teaching that portion of the class synchronously so folks can ask questions. And so far it's working great.
Thank you so much. And also your dog is adorable.
Thank you.
So Albert Engel has said that, Albert, I think you said you did it with a cheap $20 gooseneck stand and your Android phone. Could you talk to folks about how you are rigging this tech?
Yeah, so I was looking into, I did not find the Hue document camera, or I might have gone that direction, but I was trying to find a way to do some overhead calcs, and I found that I could get one of those. It's basically got a C-clamp on it that you can clamp to your table and then manipulate it however you want, and it's pretty rigid. I just got it on Amazon. It took a couple days to get there, so it works pretty well for what it is.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing as well. So I know, so moving away from the document cams, I think Jesse Kaiser has a suggestion about SolidWorks. Jesse, do you want to speak to a little bit about SolidWorks right now? If you're still here. Oh, hi.
Yeah, I'm
Hello.
still here. Hi, so I just wanted to share, I've been using an online learning platform that is specific to software, such as Autodesk software and SolidWorks, other software too. So I've integrated it into my SolidWorks class as a supplementary tool before this. And then I started shifting to a flipped classroom, more hands-on time with the students in lab, and then less need for me to lecture supplementary. So what it is they have a course already set up in Solid Professor that is from introduction all the way to the CSWA, which is a certified SolidWorks associate exam. And I personally think that is a good thing to end a course with the students being equipped to take. I've had a couple students pass it on their first attempt, which is fairly aggressive, I guess I'd say. Anyways, it has some courses on Revit in addition to SolidWorks and a few other software. But the life-saving part of it is a complete tutorial set for everything that I felt was essential. And there were a few projects that I threw in there in addition. However, the lecture portion of the course was pretty well taken care of by that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm just wondering, is anyone else using SolidWorks? Oh, I thought you might be. Andrew, I thought maybe you mentioned that SolidWorks and that maybe that I couldn't find it in the chat again, that your students are having trouble aligning the Zoom lectures or sessions with what's happening in SolidWorks. Did I read that right?
Yeah, so the big problem is that you know, in our labs we have the PCs and the dual monitors, you know, big dual monitors, and that's something that they can't replicate at home. And so you know, I mean, so there's that. So really the answer is watch the demo, watch the recorded video, and then pull up SolidWorks and go do it on your own. You know, not trying to follow along anyway. but you know, and a lot of people like to follow along. I used to work with a professor who deliberately took everybody out of the lab room into a room where they weren't sitting at computers, so that they were paying more attention and they weren't trying to stumble and keep up or something like that, you know. So you know, so keeping that in context, you know, we can do it that way, but we just can't duplicate the facilities that we have in the lab.
Right.
You know, they just can't have the same hardware at home. Our biggest hurdle though was everybody having a strong enough computer at home that could run SolidWorks. And you know, not everybody has that, but so we were handing out some computers, but I think enough. I think everybody on their own kind of did anyway. So, but that can be a big challenge. You know, I think I lucked out because you know, we've all had students who are homeless and students who have really shaky you know, so you know, having their own computer is the least of their problems. You know, you know, so I think this quarter I just lucked out, but I don't see this as a doing this as an ongoing situation and being successful.
Right, right. And I think one thing I did want to say was, if you are using something like SolidWorks or something that does require a lot of bandwidth, I think that doing a tech survey with your students really early on, and then working with students who don't have access, that just seems like a good, and then also making sure you have a backup plan for students who don't have access to, you know, a dedicated computer space. And I apologize if that's, sometimes I'm not sure by this point in the game, like what people have heard and what's, you know, kind of, yeah, I know that. But I just wanted to say a tech survey is always a good idea.
Yeah, we did that early on, and probably not early enough, but because I think for a while there I was holding out hope that, you know, our plan was we were going to go back to face-to-face, you know, after a little while. And so I was front loading my classes with the stuff that they could do on their own, holding out hope that we would be meeting face to face. And of course that was foolishness on my part. But so, yeah, you know, at this point, I don't have a backup plan. It's like, well, but wait a minute, what if they couldn't run SolidWorks on their own at home? Then what? And I don't have an answer for that.
I think that's why we are so excited to possibly start convening the engineering group regularly, because there is a chance that these conditions could persist, you know, even up for a year. And so if we can figure out low tech solutions to get students to, if not the same place, you know, like you know, if we can work to create learning conditions for students that will still get them the basic core competencies to get where they need to go, I think that would be helpful. So Steve and Renuka have some comments, and so I'm just wondering, Steve, do you want to talk about the AWS workspaces? And if you don't have, oh, maybe you're not in there. Oh, there you are. You're unmuted. Go ahead, Steve. For some reason, if you are speaking, we're not hearing you, but it looks like your mic is working. While we're waiting, Renuka?
While I'm certainly knowledgeable about SolidWorks,
Can you?
Sorry.
There you go.
Steve?
Yeah, sorry, Ed. Did that work?
We
I think
got
I had
you.
my settings wrong on the. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. And sorry to interrupt you, Renuka. Okay. All right. Anyway, I had meant to look into this, but I hadn't had time. But at the Innovations Conference in first week of March, Innovations in Community Colleges, there was someone in the business, I think it was business school or anyway, at Everett, who had a presentation on the AWS services, web workspaces. I think they were, I'm pretty sure they were free. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. They were free for students and faculty. So that's a way for students to spin up a workspace in the cloud that would run software like SolidWorks. So now there still may be a bandwidth issue. It kind of depends on how much is dependent on the actual hardware, you know, the power of the hardware and how much information is being sent over the internet. You know, so it's possible that it's still a problem for some students on slow internet connections, but at least in terms of running it. Now, that might be an option. Is probably not an option for right away, but I mention it right now just because, I mean, I'll look into it a little more, but yeah, realistically, it's hard to imagine that folks could get that up and running this term, for instance, but anyway, but it was interesting. So maybe Renuka could jump in there and that providing access to cloud-based version of SolidWorks. Maybe in this case, there's a easy solution for that.
Thanks, Steve.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. So I am proficient at SolidWorks, but I'm not proficient about IT hardware things. That's not my area of expertise. But from what I understand from the IT department, we're kind of navigating this from two different points of view. So Dassault, who makes SolidWorks, has an online version that's in beta, and there you can do a trial just straight from the SolidWorks website, and it works pretty well. It's not terrible. So I understood that we were going to try to add students to that, and Dassault was offering that for free, just from Google, no AWS involved there. Today, I got an email from somebody else in the IT department who has set up an AWS workspace for all of the students, and we're running SolidWorks through there. And I can tell you that I'm using SolidWorks on a Surface at home because I use Mac, so I'm not doing that. SolidWorks doesn't run on Mac without extra stuff, for those who aren't aware. So the cloud version, the AWS version of SolidWorks, works better than my standalone installed version of SolidWorks, so I can speak to that. And I don't have crazy either. So that's what I can tell you about that, and it's certainly a solution for folks who have Chromebooks and things like that. So I think there are two different avenues, and forgive me if I'm misinformed. This is just definitely not the cloud-based stuff is just not my area, but I'm happy to give you any information that I do have.
Well, I think that was already very helpful, even just knowing that the cloud version worked better than the install version. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really grateful. Jesse also asked about grants that can help with acquiring a student to use SolidWorks. And Lucas, I think you're referring to the CARES funding. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I haven't spent enough time looking at it to know all the specifics of the CARES grant, but I know that colleges were given a substantial amount of money to have a certain percentage of it be devoted towards students specifically from the federal government, and so you'll want to make sure you talk to your deans or talk to your VP and find out what's being done there. I know at LCC we already have up and running a form students can fill out to request support for might be technology or whatever they need for financial assistance for the quarter because of the COVID-19 situation. So I would, if you think there's a concern for that, I would make sure your students know about it and find out what the students need to do to get that access to that financial assistance. Then the other side is I know there's also money in that where they can use it to purchase technology, to purchase software for the institution itself, and not going specifically to one student. So make sure you talk to your deans, your VPs, and find out what's being done with that or what you could possibly use it for. And I would do that sooner than later.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, Lucas, that's a great idea. Thank you so much. So I recognize that it's 4:30 and I kept looking at the clock. Like I was like, did I start this meeting on time? Like, how is this going so fast? Like how is it time to be done? And so I'm hoping, I know that some people might have to leave, but I am hoping that those of you who can stay on might stay on for just a little bit longer, because I know we've really just been talking primarily about labs and software. And I know there was a question about exams from Charles, and who I don't think is on the call anymore. But I also, and someone else wrote that they're not teaching any lab classes. And so I guess I'm just wondering, before we sign off, are there any other burning issues or challenges that we haven't covered that people would really like us to address?
I have a question. Does
Yeah.
anybody deal with hand sketches? I have some assignments where we're doing hand sketches as part of the design process. And, you know, in the past, we've turned things in hard copy, and then I've scanned them at the school. And so then, you know, I can make then I send the electronic version to the students. But anybody have a solution for getting a you know, a hand, you know, a pencil and paper type sketch to me to evaluate?
Albert has a suggestion. Albert, do you want to take the mic?
Yeah, there's a great app that's on Android and iOS devices called Clear Scanner, and it's a really quick and easy way to convert a paper into a PDF. I have a students do one of the low stake assignments in the first week, like answering some questions like, hey, what are you studying in terms of engineering? Why are you studying engineering? I think Google Drive also has one, but I think Clear Scanner just seemed to be one that worked pretty well for students, because one quarter I just said, okay, the one that we used to use is full of spyware, so try 4 or 5 different ones and tell me what worked. And Clear Scanner was like the overall student top popular vote.
That's great scholarship of teaching and learning. Albert, thank you.
Is there any cost involved with that, or is that a free thing? Or
there's the free version has some ads in it, but you can, it's like $2 or $3 if you want to get a professional version of it. But all of the students, I think, use the free version. They complained about ads, but you know, students will complain about everything.
It also looks like Genius Scan, and it also looks like Scan to PDF is now native to Android and iOS. So Eric has posted some instructions to the chat.
Yeah, I have for a couple of years now, I've had my students scan written homework for things like statics and design sketches for Intro to Design, all to Canvas. I haven't taken any paper submissions in my face-to-face classes for years at this point.
Thank you, and thanks for voicing that question too, Andrew. Thank you. What anything else? Any other burning questions or things that people are just dying to talk about or ask? So one thing I would like to ask is, would this group like to meet again, maybe next week? Or in 2 weeks, just to kind of check in and share how things are going, maybe new challenges great. So Andrew is saying thumbs up. If folks don't mind typing yes into the chat or no, that will help us get a sense of like, you know, if folks would like to meet again. And also, if I could politely request your emails if I don't already have them. So if you've signed up on the kind of master list for the engineering COP, then great. But otherwise, if you don't think I have your email, if you could type it into the chat so I can make sure that I fill you in on whatever else is happening. And Lucas, what are you thinking about?
I was just thinking that, sorry, I just was typing something in the chat. If people needed more information on the CARES Act money, I have some resources I can send them. But I was just thinking we need to probably connect with the CERTI and take a look at what they got and leverage that for what people need.
That would be awesome. And I will look through the chat again. And is the person who's the president of that organization still on the call? And I'm sorry that I didn't track the name.
Pat. Yep.
Yeah.
Pat,
Washington chair for Washington. Sorry.
Pat, do you think, what's the best, most efficient way to do this? Like, would you like to have a meeting to follow up, or would you like to, another thing you could do is add us to teach as teachers, and we could start to build out modules, under COVID-19? Like, what do you think would be the best way?
Well, I mean, do you have 10 minutes right now to just kind of hang out in this room?
Yeah, absolutely.
Want to do that and kind of wrap up here, and I'll just hang tight?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Also, everyone, I am planning to sell your contact information. And as Steve has so correctly intuited, he knows me well. We have adjacent cubicles. So he knows all of my shady mastermind details. So just teasing, I won't. I promise they're safe with me. All right, everyone. So I am going to stop the recording.